Lena Voss had never asked the moon for anything. She was not the kind of woman who made wishes. She was the kind who folded her hands and got through things. She had been getting through things since she was 9 years old, when her father lost his rank in the pack, and the family name stopped meaning anything. She learned early that wanting too much out loud only gave people something to take from you. So when the silver mark appeared on her wrist at midnight, a burning line of light that moved like water and settled into the shape of a crescent, she did not feel chosen. She felt afraid. The mark meant the moon goddess had named her for Calum Draven, the Alpha King, whose mating ceremony was happening the very next morning in the great hall of the Draven estate. The mark meant she was his fated mate. Pack law said so. 400 years of tradition said so. None of that made it less terrifying. She went anyway. She wore a plain gray dress because it was the nicest thing she owned. She walked into a hall full of wolves who belonged there, high-ranked, well-dressed, comfortable in rooms like that, and she stood near the back and showed a guard her wrist because he asked to see it. The room went quiet when Calum saw her. He was everything the stories said, tall, still, the kind of man whose presence changed the temperature of a room. He looked at her mark, and then he looked at her, and she understood in that moment that he was not happy about this, not angry, not cruel, just not happy, like a man who had already planned his life and was now being informed that the plan had changed. He claimed the bond in front of the council because pack law required it. He said the words the way someone signs a contract they have already decided to revisit later. She was given a room in the East Wing. He lived in the North Wing. She counted the footsteps between them one night, just once, and then she stopped counting. She tried. This is the part of the story she would always want people to know. She tried. She learned how he liked his coffee, black, no sugar, too hot for most people, and she had it ready each morning. She attended every council meeting and sat in the last chair and said nothing, but she listened to everything. She memorized the names of the pack elders, the border families, the mothers who had lost sons in the Eastern Wars. She learned the pack the way you learn a language, slowly, from the edges, until one day it starts to make sense. Calum never noticed, or he noticed, and filed it somewhere he never looked. The result was the same. He was not unkind. That was almost the hardest part. He did not mock her or belittle her. He simply did not see her. She was an obligation he was managing, and he managed her the way he managed all obligations, efficiently and without warmth. 3 months into the bond, she went looking for him after a council session and found him in the private war room. He was standing near the window with Serana Vale, his former chosen, a woman from an old, powerful bloodline, luminous in the specific way that makes rooms rearrange themselves. They were not doing anything wrong. They were just standing together, close, comfortable. The way people stand when they have already decided something and are simply waiting for the right moment to say it out loud. Lena closed the door quietly. She walked to the palace gardens and sat on the stone bench near the old ash tree, and she cried for exactly as long as she could afford to. Then she stopped, not because she chose to, but because something in her chest went quiet, in the way things go quiet when they are finished, rather than when they are paused. She did not sleep that night. 2 weeks later, Calum called the rejection ceremony. He did it in front of the High Council, in the same great hall where he had first seen her mark. He read from pack law. Every word was formal, correct, and precise. The bond severance was performed properly, with witnesses and records, and all the legal weight of his authority. The silver mark on her wrist went cold. His did too, she noticed. He did not flinch. She watched his face very carefully for a moment. This man who was built like certainty and moved like authority, and she understood something in that moment that no one could have told her, and that she would carry a long time. She walked out. The crowd parted for her. They always parted for grief they did not know how to touch. She heard the whispers start before she reached the door. An Omega girl, barely ranked, publicly severed by the Alpha King himself. She would be the story people told their daughters as a warning. She knew this. She kept walking. She went north. There was a village in the unclaimed territory past the Greyvale Mountains. Small, forgotten, full of wolves the pack system had discarded. Rejected mates. Low-ranked families who had run out of patience with high-ranked wolves. A few elders who had simply decided they were done with courts and politics and the performance of loyalty. They had built something there, not grand, not powerful, just functional and honest, and theirs. They let her stay. She learned to hunt in the northern forests, where the trees were so dense you had to trust your instincts because your eyes were not much use. She learned pack medicine from an elder woman named Mora, who had been a healer for 50 years and had opinions about everything and was always right. She sat with the elders at night and listened to them talk about old pack history, and slowly, without meaning to, without planning it, she started to speak. She offered an opinion here, a suggestion there. She was careful, at first, to offer them gently, but they were received well, and then asked for, and then expected. She stopped being careful about it. Months passed. The village grew. Word spread in the way word spreads in small communities, quietly and thoroughly, that there was a woman in the north who listened well, and thought clearly, and did not use her authority to make herself more comfortable. Other rejected wolves came, a few young families who had left their packs over unfair treatment, 2 former beta warriors who were tired of fighting wars for kings they did not respect. She did not think of herself as building anything. She was only doing what needed doing, one day at a time. Meanwhile, Kalem's kingdom was cracking. 3 Western packs refused his authority within 6 months of the rejection ceremony. 2 Eastern border clans stopped answering the king's summons. His beta, a steady man named Orin, who had served the Draven line for 20 years, told him plainly that this began when the moon mark severed, that the goddess had withdrawn her protection the moment the king rejected her chosen, that there were consequences to breaking what the divine had made. Kalem was a practical man. He did not believe in signs. He increased the border guard and convened more council sessions, and worked harder, because working harder was the solution he knew. The cracks widened. Then the moon goddess appeared to the high council. It had not happened in 400 years, not a vision, not a dream, but actual presence, the way light fills a room from a source you cannot look at directly. She did not speak at length. She used 7 words. She said, "He broke what I made." She didn't. The council chamber went very cold. Serana Vale, sitting at the table beside Kalem, went pale in a way that had nothing to do with the temperature. Kalem stood at the back of the room, very still, with the particular stillness of a man who has just understood that he has been wrong for a year and cannot undo a single day of it. He did not say anything. There was nothing useful to say. In the north, the moon goddess came to Lena on a clear night, when the village was quiet and the stars were the kind of bright that happens after a very cold day. She did not appear as light. She appeared as presence, the way you sense a room change before you see what changed. She did not flatter Lena. She was not that kind of goddess. She said that the pack system was fracturing, that old bloodlines were failing because strength alone had never been enough. Only everyone had agreed to pretend otherwise for several centuries. That what the packs needed now was not the strongest wolf in any room, but the one who had learned to lead after being removed from every room that mattered. She told Lena there was a choice, a real one. The mark on her wrist could stay as it was, a scar, a memory, a closed door. Or it could open into something that had not existed in 400 years, a sovereign mark, authority over every pack, given not by bloodline, but by the goddess herself. Lena was quiet for a long time. She thought about the village behind her, the elders and the rejected wolves, and the young families who had come north with nothing and built something. She thought about what it had cost her to get here. She thought, briefly, about Kalem, the moment his mark went cold, and the way he had not flinched, and what she had understood about him in that moment. Then she said yes. She arrived at the high summit without announcement. Every pack alpha from every territory had gathered under pressure from the spreading crisis. The great hall of the summit citadel was full of powerful people who were accustomed to being the most important presence in any room. Lena walked in with the village elders at her back and the sovereign mark running silver from her wrist to her shoulder. The full mark, which no wolf in living memory had seen, and the room did not go quiet. It went still. There is a difference. Quiet is what happens when sound stops. Still is what happens when everyone in a room simultaneously decides to pay attention to the same thing. Calum was standing near the east wall. She saw him the moment she walked in, because she had trained herself, in the north, to locate the most significant thing in any room before she did anything else. He saw her too. She watched something move across his face. Not guilt, not quite, but the expression a person wears when they encounter the full weight of a decision they made a year ago and have been carrying since. She looked at him for one moment. Then she turned to the council. She spoke for 40 minutes without notes. She laid out what had fractured and why, and what would need to happen to rebuild it, and what she expected from every alpha in that room. She was not loud. She did not need to be. She had spent a year learning to speak in a room where people only listened if you were worth listening to, and the habit had settled into her voice permanently. After the first session, Calum found her in the corridor outside the council chamber. He said her name. She stopped. He had clearly been preparing something. She could tell from the way he stood, the careful arrangement of the words he had chosen. He said that he had been wrong. He said that he had let pride and expectation and old habit make a decision that pack law should not have allowed him to make alone. He said he was sorry. He said it without flinching, without hedging, which was more than she had expected from him, and she filed that away as information. He said that if she allowed it, he would spend however long was necessary making it right. She let him finish. Then she said, quietly, "I know." Not acceptance, not refusal, not comfort, just acknowledgement. The acknowledgement of someone who had already processed the thing he was still arriving at. He understood immediately what she meant. She could see that he understood. She probably knew he would, and said it anyway. She turned and walked back into the council chambers. The crowning was performed at dawn, outside, under open sky, because the sovereign rite required the moon's witness, and no hall was large enough for what it meant. Every alpha knelt. Some did it willingly. Some did it because the goddess's mark left no room for argument. The distinction mattered less than the result, which was that every powerful wolf in the territory bent their knee to the woman the pack system had once thrown away in a public hall, while she stood in a gray dress, and listened to her own rejection read aloud from a legal document. Calum knelt last. He was the last because of what it cost him. The precise, specific cost of being the most powerful wolf on earth yesterday, and the man kneeling before his former mate today. He went down slowly. He held it. She stood above him, the sovereign queen, carrying a mark that ran from wrist to shoulder like a river, and she did not say anything. She did not need to make anything of the moment. The moment was already what it was. She stepped away. He rose. That was all. She ruled. Not by fear, and not by the old laws that had allowed kings to treat bonds as paperwork and mates as appointments to be cancelled. She ruled through the network she had built in exile, the rejected and the overlooked, and the ones who had been told too many times that their experience did not count in important rooms. They became her counsel, her advisors, her most trusted voices. The pack stopped fracturing. The borders held. Small disputes that used to become wars got resolved before they became anything. Wolves who had been quietly suffering under bad leadership had a place to bring their grievances and expect them to be heard. Calum served on the High Council under her authority. He was good at it. He was a capable man when his ego was not the most important thing in the room, and under her governance it never was, which meant he had no choice but to be capable. He was. She let him be. They did not speak of the year. It was in every room they entered together, the rejection ceremony, the gray dress, the door she had closed quietly on the war room, the bench in the palace gardens where she had cried until something in her chest went quiet, and it was never named, because naming it would have made it smaller than it was. The moon goddess had chosen her twice. The first time, no one believed it. The second time, no one said a word.